right, so now you can hear me because that was recorded
Yes.
live. That's the first time that's done that. We don't talk during the intro, but we are badly needed and long overdue. A controversial
You can
podcast
do
about
that.
Colorado Springs. It's controversial because it makes sense. I'm your host, Nick Raven, and giggling over to my right here, my little left, is my co-host, Emily Lewis, and navigator. How are you doing? You were really freaking out there. Like, the intro's playing, and you're like, I can't hear you, Nick. It's like, because you can't. You're not supposed to.
I'm not on the screen.
Yeah, I know. Neither was I.
No, I wasn't there, so I didn't, and I can't hear the intro.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're fine.
So
I can hear it, though. That's actually so it doesn't produce a feedback loop, so it doesn't get really weird and echoey sounding at the beginning. However, I still have to see this afterward and make sure that it doesn't totally fuck up. But in part, you can't hear it, but that's because it's not fucked up. That's where we're at.
Okay. Anyway. Awesome.
That's okay, a little inside baseball here.
Right?
How are you?
I am good. I'm very excited to meet our guest.
Yes.
For today's show. I did some Googling.
And our guest today is the Reverend Roger Butts.
Yes.
He's a good friend of mine. He actually facilitated my wedding. I knew him through my wife, and progressive preacher. And you did a bunch of research.
I did so much research. I said, this is my passion project, honestly. Yeah. Something I'm super interested in and can talk about forever.
Yeah. And thankfully, due to our existence, we don't have to talk about anything forever.
No.
But for the sake of our listeners, we do not have an infinity length podcast. But we had a really, really good discussion with Roger here. We're talking about religion in Colorado Springs, which turns out it's kind of a pillar here. As
it is.
Researching, as you're highlighting there, just the how I don't want to spoil anything because we've got a really good chat, but just how it came to be here in Colorado Springs.
Yep, how religion itself has, and specifically certain parts of religion have shaped the Colorado Springs that we're in today, and overall the country that we're in today.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, it's even really construed or been construed politically, because we are like the last red conservative holdout, and no doubt a huge part of that is because we are this conservative, this evangelical Christian.
Yes,
headquarters.
We have been inundated by the evangelical Christian movement.
Yeah, absolutely. So we get to talk to Roger about that. We talk about where he comes from, what he's been up to. We didn't actually get to talk to it in the conversation. We did have limitations on time, but he was actually part of the big movement to get the death penalty banned here in Colorado as well.
Yes, he was.
Did you have anything to contribute? Because then we'll just cut to the interview.
No, let's get started. I'm excited.
Right, let's get started. All right. Let's bring on our guest. Thank you for coming.
Yay!
Reverend Roger Butts.
Thank you.
All right, again.
Yeah, here we go. Roger, welcome to our little show that we do here. Hi.
Well, I am glad to be here, Nick. Thank you so much. And Emily, too.
Yeah.
I am delighted to be here.
Hello.
So we wanted to talk a bit, because this is a very hyper-local podcast. We're talking about Colorado Springs, and I wanted you to kind of introduce how you got into town and your background.
So my name is Roger Butts. I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister. I've been ordained for 20 years. And I came to Colorado Springs 12 years ago, 13 years ago. And I came here for work. I came here to take a church. And then I became a hospital chaplain. And now I'm back at All Souls Church, back in the parish. But I came here. I had four. I had four places I might have gone, and I came here. I thought there was a lot of upside to Colorado Springs and the Front Range, and I found some really good friends here, and I'm glad I came here. I don't know how long I'll be here, but I came
Are you
here
trying
for.
to abandon our city right as it's getting great, Roger? Is that what you're trying to
But
do?
our little village is growing up. That's for sure.
It
Um,
definitely is,
yeah, I like the East
thankfully.
Coast. Baltimore City and DC, and Marta and I are from there, and so we like it out there. But I don't know.
You see how it
There
goes.
are lots of good things going on right now.
Yeah. uh, so
Yes, absolutely.
we want to dive into kind of what Colorado Springs has been, especially through the winter, because you've been 13 years, so that would have been like 2010-ish.
9.
2009 is when you landed. What was Colorado Springs like when you got here, religiously?
Oh yeah, when I first got here, there was. I don't know if it was when I first got here, but there was a mayor named Steve Bach
Uh-huh. He was
or
the
something.
mayor.
Yeah, he was like
Yes.
hostile, man. And when I got here, I joined up a lawsuit against the city because they were trying to go after some homeless people, and the ACLU brought a suit, and I joined it.
Mm-hmm.
But Nick, you find your friends really quick. And it's kind of like the South. I've spent time in the South, and you find your friends really quick. This is obviously a military town. It's obviously an evangelical town. But Marta and I moved to the West Side, and we were like, we got to find our people. And we found a lot of them on the West Side. And I will tell you that there is a great progressive community here, and they're not ascendant, they're not in power, but when you come across them, it is really inspiring and beautiful. Obviously, focus on the family and new life and Woodman Valley. Those places are enormous and powerful. First Pres is in that same camp. Um, and so fucking what, right? Who cares?
Yeah.
Right.
Who cares?
Right.
Let them go and do their thing. I'm going to hang out with Steve Handon of blessed memory, who ran Mesa House. I'm going to hang out with Christy Milligan and Jesse Pocock, Christy at Westside Cares, and Jesse at Inside Out. I'm going to hang out with Marta Fioriti, who runs a little church up in the Black Forest that is radical as it can be.
Yep.
So,
You find, like you said, you quickly find your friends. Emily, did you want to just lay down some groundwork for how Colorado Springs really just became this evangelical haven that it became?
Well, when I got here the first time in '79,
oh,
of course I was very small. But I remember coming up in school, and I was just talking about the fact that in my middle school, I want to say eighth or ninth grade, which was, still back in the 80s, during my biology year, when it got to the teaching of evolution, and I watched as half of my class literally got up and walked out. And I'm sitting there as a teenager going, what? Wait a minute. First, I didn't know we were allowed to do that ever. And
I would have done that during calculus or something, right?
Yes. Second, how is this a thing that's even happening? So through my research today, come to find out, I went down a scary, scary rabbit hole.
Well, what's the start of that rabbit hole?
The start of that rabbit hole actually goes, let me double check here. I went back all the way to 1989 when we had our illustrious mayor, Robert Isaac, who, was fantastic.
And I highlighted that in the document there because the current city administration building is the Robert M. Isaac building.
Yes.
Which, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue.
And basically, what happened to Colorado Springs in the mid to late 80s is we had an economic regression. And the city of Colorado Springs was freaking out a little bit because they were talking about closing military bases, which, you know, is a huge part of our economy.
Right. 60%.
And yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mayor Isaac sent out a team of people to see what we could bring in to replace, if necessary, the money coming in from the military. And what they found and what they brought was Evangelical Christianity.
So they're going
Groups
out poaching these big entities, like Focus on the Family and stuff like that. Like, hey, we can be your new headquarters.
Mm-hmm. In fact, the El Pomar Foundation is directly responsible for Focus on the Family coming into the Springs in 91. They gave them a 4.2 or 2.4 multi-million-dollar grant to come into Colorado Springs.
Gross. That's gross.
Yeah, so that's and as of 94, there were 44 other entities in Colorado Springs, like Focus on the Family, that essentially gave Colorado Springs, just Colorado Springs, the same monetary foundation as other big lobbyists in Washington.
This became the polar opposite. It became the conservative Washington, D.C., but for religious lobbyists versus Washington, D.C., which is more the liberal outpost, or, I mean, maybe you could cut it down the middle with the Beltway. You're from the area, the East Coast, that Maryland super conglomerate there. Is that something that you're familiar with, Roger?
Well, yeah, I mean, I used to work on the Hill, so, you know, I used to work for a Democratic senator from North Carolina. And so I've only worked in politics and religion.
So great topics to start any dinner with. Yeah,
exactly. So I'm trying to get like a sex education certificate so I can be buried with the idea that I only worked in politics, religion, and sex. You know, that's my big
That
goal.
is fantastic.
I think so. But hey, look, I my first job out of school was in politics. But even then, I was hanging out with communities that were trying to figure out how to bring a little social justice into the world. So the Catholic Worker House in DC is huge.
Yes.
Very influential among progressives. This group called Church of the Savior, which is a group that came around in like the 40s, and they moved up to DC, and they just do almost nothing except ministries with the marginalized. So I was hanging out with lots of I was hanging out with a lot of different types, and I wasn't really cut out for politics. I can write well and I can do a few things, but you know, it's a pretty competitive sport. It's kind of like rugby.
It is.
And I just didn't have that rugby kind of attitude. So I didn't really survive in politics. And I wanted to get over to seminary to try to figure out what makes a faith community, whether it's right or left or middle or whatever, what enables a faith community to move in the direction as a community towards human dignity, human rights, and so on. And that was my big question. It remains my big question. And so, yeah, I mean, the fact that El Pomar, the fact that all these people panicked and were like, yes, you can come over here. And you add that to the military bases, you add that evangelical voice, and there's a real temptation, I'd say, here to side with Christian nationalism.
100%.
Which is really scary. And I'll be speaking on that on the 14th of August at All Souls Church with Jeff Scholes. Now, I want to say a word, who teaches at UCCS and is a good friend. I want to say a word that is a little different than the tenor that we've gone with so far. And that is like, I brought Frank Schaeffer in. He was a really big part of the religious right back when they were becoming anti-gay and anti-abortion and all that. And I brought him in. He's a progressive now. He's writing really interesting books. And Jeff and I brought him in, a number of other people. And I've also brought in like filmmakers. And one of the films was on Howard Thurman, and another was on Reinhold Niebuhr, African-American progressive writer, and Reinhold Niebuhr, sort of a realist writer. But I will say this. First Congregational, All Souls Unitarian, First Methodist, they were all like sponsors, but New Life Downtown was too. So I want to be sure that to nuance this conversation a bit and say there are times when the Air Force Academy, New Life Downtown, some other places will really step into trying to build coalitions with differently minded people,
with marginalized, different.
With different voices, you know?
Yeah.
And
we're all kind of in this together. This is not a community that's owned by any particular group. It's actually a community. it's actually an ocean, a nation of we. Right?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the problem comes into when that is not remembered by all.
Yeah.
Right.
When it becomes territorial, and that. Roger, I want to ask.
Yeah.
What was it in your upbringing? Were you religious? Were you religious growing up? And what is it that? Because I grew up in a very conservative household, and we were taught to be charitable and to accept other people. But in the conventions of that, and when someone says they grew up non-denominational, it means Baptist. So I grew up Baptist, and so but there's the exclusiveness of that. And so what is it about you that made you think differently about the whole thing?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would say probably a little bit of God's grace. I don't quite know, but I would say that I had parents who were religious, but they weren't overly like hate those people and hate those people. They weren't like that wasn't their jam. I did have a church that was a little bit like that. And I've written a lot about it over the years. I've written a lot about this because I had to really deconstruct and reconstruct my faith. And, you know, it was important to me. Like my uncles, a couple of them were Southern Baptist ministers, but like one of my uncles has been on Oprah. You know, one of my uncles has been like with all kinds of different folks, and he's a good man. He's just different than I am. So religion was always important. You know, he's the one who wrote the 5 love languages business.
Oh, okay.
And my cousin Derek, his son, and I were off to do seminary at the same time. And he blessed us both. He knew I was a Unitarian, but he said nice prayers for us, and it was really sweet. So I've had exposure to people who have different ideas, but a graciousness of heart. And that's important. But college did it. I mean, my roommate was gay. I was reading like James Joyce and Garcia Marquez, and I was like, holy shit, you know, like
you're not supposed to admit that college changes you.
Well, it did. It was great.
Those communist thought leaders and stuff trying to convert you out of your...
I was in hippie land, man. That was great. I was thinking great. And all my friends, a lot of my friends were gay. And like one was like another friend, he wasn't gay, but his whole goal the first year of college, and we were in the mountains of North Carolina, his whole goal was to go the whole year without wearing shoes. So it was just a wacky... It was a wacky goal.
That's an awesome goal because I hate shoes, but you know.
I know.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a Nick goal right there.
Yeah, definitely.
I know. You got to love the crazy ones. So I don't know. You know, I always had a big heart for people who are different, I was bullied. I think I was bullied as a dork and my last name and stuff. So I probably had a little bit of sensitivity. But I also had parents who, while they were in a traditional church, they didn't buy into all the silliness.
And the
Well, that's always good too.
There's a lot of anger in that community as well.
Oh my God, so much fear. So much fear.
Mhm.
No, you're the one who's afraid. You are.
Yeah.
We're not afraid. It's
Right.
you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That gets tough.
A lot of projection going on there.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But if you looked at my wall where I write, Dorothy Day, who is a Catholic, and Carl McColman, who's a Catholic, and Saint Teresa of Avila are all here on my wall overlooking me. Howard Thurman, I've mentioned Thomas Merton. They're all here, my little cloud of witnesses. So I really try to draw on a lot of different voices.
Yeah.
James Baldwin, who left the church entirely, but there was still the church inside of him, and he's expressing this kind of beloved community and this kind of anger and rage and hope and love that is about as churchy as it could be. In fact, I took a class on James Baldwin in seminary from an African American professor. So, the idea of atheism not being able to teach us something is just
Well,
out the window.
Famously, Bernie went to Liberty University early on in his 2016 campain and spoke.
Oh, right.
And spoke to.
I thought you meant when he was in college. I was like, are you kidding me?
No, that was a long time ago. But yeah, he went in front of, Falwell Jr.'s flock, essentially, and told him, like, you know what, I may not be a Christian in name, but, that's a terrible Bernie accent, but he's like, we share so many of the same values, and it's become perverse to me, unfortunately, that in order to experience true what Christian values, and they're not even specific to what Christ said or anything like that. You see that kind of universally through Eastern religions, even, and through secular teachings. You can come to these conclusions on your own.
Golden rule.
Yeah, without a Bible, but then to have to ally yourself with secular interests or secular groups to have that Jesus experience. Emily, what else did you see in your relationships, and then even here in the Springs?
So much. Really and truly, it comes down to, for me, and even this has really been established in the research. 30 years ago, religion in Colorado Springs, in America itself, was very much more, my religion says I can't, but you go do you. You go do whatever it is you want to do. I found a survey from 89 that would have been done in 88, where 54% of the people surveyed did not agree with abortion, but 74% of that same group of people were like, it's absolutely somebody's choice. I'm not gonna, but you go do you. And watching this shift from my religion says I can't to my religion says you can't.
Yeah. The dominionism.
Yeah, and that's I've run across that in so many places in doing this research of, again, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, the Christian movement was so different. But also, I was telling Nick earlier as I was going through this, if you want to know how we got to where we are, this was the roadmap. This showed you exactly how we got to where we are right now.
Which was what?
Listening to these religious leaders say, we're not trying to change the country. We just want to make things safe for our Christian families.
Yes.
And if it happens to include you, like all the better.
Yeah.
Right.
Having seminars on how to approach and infiltrate politics, and from school board meetings all the way up, and literally holding seminars on how to affect Christian change in every single facet of our lives, and doing it in such a way that they said, we're not doing this. Okay, well then they're not doing this until all of a sudden, oh, but yes, you are.
Roger,
this is exactly what you've been doing.
Are you familiar with the recent, the conservative there was a get together at like a convention where they had Boebert and Lamborn were there, and it's like, we're going to conquer the 7 mountains for Christianity. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all.
Somebody has tried to school me about it. It's like somebody, I can't remember who it was, but somebody was like, "Watch out for those 7 mountains," and I'm like, "All right, I'll watch out for them." I don't want to be anything, okay. Yeah, but I don't want to be any part of that. But it's like this Christian nationalism on steroids kind of thing, and this is what I worry about, is that. Once you start going down that Christian nationalism route, and I think it was Representative Lauren Breedert or something, I don't know what her name is.
Boebert.
But she said religion should be running government. It's like Christianity should be running government. Well, what? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. And the Catholic bishops just, I gave a statement to I think the House Judiciary Committee or somebody the other day, at the invitation of the Interfaith Alliance, on in support of Reproductive Health Equity Act.
Yes.
And the Catholic bishops just came out like 2 weeks ago and said, we're going to try to overturn all these protections in Colorado. I was like, all right, all right, you got all that power, you've got all those people, but I can assure you that we're going to fight back. And I can assure
100%.
you, your misogyny and your hatred and your fear are not going to win. Love is going to win. Love is going to win. Love is going to win. And
it has to.
It has to. And I'll just say these 2 things. So I'm willing to fight over here on policy issues and all this against Christian nationalism and, the 7 mountains, which sounds so Lord of the Rings, it's like, what are you saying?
I just looked it up. It's insane. They honestly believe that by following, by fulfilling the 7 mountain mandate, that they will bring about end times.
And it's just stupid, It's like, shut the fuck up.
Thank you.
It's just stupid. When I was a kid, here's what scared me to death was, and then I want to make 2 points, Nick, because I got the preacher in me has to speak. But
I remember
when I was a kid,
I remember Sunday mornings. It's like, I've only got you for 45 minutes. We're getting this done.
Yeah, right. So what I would say when I was a kid, the bad part of my church was that they would show us these films where like the end time would happen, the apocalypse, or all that end time stuff would happen. The rapture, yes, that's what it was. My favorite bumper sticker, by the way, is "Can I have your car after the rapture?" And so there'd be these planes, and like the pilot was going to get sucked up into the air by this like very militant Jesus
in the twinkling of an eye. Yeah,
in the twinkling of an eye, and the plane crashes. And I just wrote a poem about that, and so that was my scary thing. Like, that was really my scary thing. And it doesn't reflect the Jesus that I know at all. It doesn't reflect the Christianity I know. It is power hungry. It is fear based. It is control. And that libertarian approach to like what you were talking about earlier, Emily, has been replaced with just this drive for power, and it's going to bring down the evangelicals. Everybody comes down eventually. They tried their hand at power, and they suck at it. Basically, they're going to. It's just going to be a little blip, but it's going to be painful while it is.
Oh yeah.
But I will say this, and I've got to make a couple of points. One is that while I'm willing to work on this policy stuff, and I really want to stand up for progressivism, I also really want to hold out hope for bridges around difference and otherness, and really try to make as wide a circle as possible. And so the guy who Brian Stevenson, who founded Equal Justice Initiative, an anti-death penalty group, he says the most important word in the world is proximity. If you are close to someone who is like at Focus or at New Life or at First Pres, or if you're on that side and you're close to somebody at All Souls Unitarian, we at least have an opportunity to find the common ground that we can find. No, that's what Bernie did at Liberty, right? Let's try to focus on common ground. Number two, Emmanuel Levinas talks about the only thing that can convert us is the face of the other. And what it converts us to. Levinas was a Jewish scholar in France most of his family perished in the Holocaust. But what the face of the other converts us to is the idea that you can't kill anybody. You cannot kill anybody. And from that place, you can try to build peace with others. And then the last thing I'll say is that at All Souls Unitarian, where I'm serving as a transitional minister downtown, the other day, somebody backed out on me who was going to do a guest speaking gig, and I had to rally and quickly build a new guest speaker. And so I reached out to my friend Jeff Scholes, who's a professor at UCCS, and he went to Princeton Seminary and became an atheist. And he went to Iliff School of Theology and University of Denver, and he teaches religious studies at UCCS. I asked him to come. And then I asked my friend Yemi Mobilade, who is running for mayor right now, but we didn't mention that. But he's an immigrant.
Roger.
What?
Keep that out of there.
I know, right? He's an immigrant. He ran the Economic Development Office. He's been at First Pres. He's a traditional Christian. And I wanted the three of us to share the pulpit, and we did. And we did it in a way that was respectful and kind and loving and proximity. And I think that's huge. I think we've got to model that. Now, I'm not going to roll over and, kiss the ring of those 7 mountain types. I'm going to stand against them, but I'm also going to hold up a model of finding common ground and proximity to the extent that I can.
What was your reaction
it's always
immediately after the whole Roe v. Wade thing? And then Emily, what did you have?
Oh, I was pissed.
Emily, what were you going to say as I trumped over?
Oh, I was just going to say it's I know, so rude.
I know.
Nick.
Yeah.
Gosh. So
Emily.
basically in the vein of the common ground and the commonality, I've noticed my neighbor that just moved out from downstairs, she and I, built a little bit of a friendship. And there were things that we absolutely could not talk about. She would bring something up and I would just kind of let it, we're not gonna go there. We weren't like eat dinner at each other's house friends, but we were at least friendly at each other.
Right.
But trying to find that common ground is becoming so difficult.
Yes.
Mostly because, it is hard to relate to someone whose entire personality and being exists to destroy the very things that I find, are important. That
Absolutely.
and so the common ground is becoming this tiny little sliver of space.
Yep.
And it makes it difficult, because I know that the only way that things are going to get better is for us to start finding that. But while the things are bad, it almost does not exist on many, many, many levels.
Roger, do you feel like we're actually like turning a corner? I mean, politically we can feel that, but as someone who's in the faith in that, do you feel like people are starting to slowly turn and accept things that aren't this dominionist belief here in town?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going on at Woodman Valley. I don't know what's going on at New Life uptown, the North Campus. I don't know what these folks are doing. I do know the Republican Party looks like it's gone a little bit off the cliff in places like Texas.
Yeah, just a little
places like Texas and Colorado, and it looks like they've really gone a little crazy, and it's going to be hard. But there are ways to heal the heart of democracy, and one of them is that sense that we're all in it together. And until we can get there, we're fucked. We are fucked.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
But if we can get back to an idea of that we're all in this together, I think Trumpism is going to be just a little blip. I think
hopefully
Boris Johnson is going to be a little blip. But I'm an optimist. I am naive as they come.
Yep.
And
I'm right there with you.
But what I would say is, so my tradition, Unitarian Universalism, pretty privileged people, liberals with a lot of work to do around racial justice and white supremacy culture and blah, 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 right? A lot of work to do. But I will say that we have been very comfortable because we've been on the side of like Enlightenment values for 200 years, right? And so now it's like those Enlightenment values are at risk. When Bonhoeffer went to jail because he tried to assassinate Hitler, when he had time to think about it, he basically came up with the idea that the church was useless. It was pointless in the face of this kind of extreme risk and danger. Yes. And I think Bonhoeffer still has something to teach the Church Universal and Unitarian Universalism and Judaism to really risk being in the public square, standing up for Enlightenment values, standing up for women's rights and minority rights and GLBTQ and queer rights, all of these things. And the question, are we of any use, is so timely. And that's what he always asked. And I want a Unitarian Universalism that is of use. I don't see it turning around right now. I see the evangelicals having their little wet dream of getting power, and they're using it poorly, and it's ugly. Roe v. Wade was just the start. The prayer guy on the 50-yard line. Give me a break, man. Like I don't want.
Well, exactly.
I don't want school teachers teaching my kids how to pray.
No, thank you. I am so glad every single day right now that I no longer have children in school.
Yes.
That my youngest is done now. And so the fact that I don't have to specifically, personally, go and have a conniption fit at a school board meeting is great. I will happily go to have a conniption fit for somebody else's kid.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Nick will be the first one to tell you, I have no problem throwing a hissy fit for anybody.
Right.
It's my favorite thing.
Because it feels good, right?
Well, it's more than that, because I know that I come from a place of privilege.
Right.
Yeah.
And there are so many people who need a voice, who don't have a voice.
Right.
That if I can use mine for that, then I've done the thing I'm supposed to do with that privilege.
Right.
And you bring up kind of a difference there in, like, even when you're in a church, like going to someone's church who's even slightly different, like
Yes.
going to a church that's like, oh, they wear jeans here. Ooh. Ooh. Ooh, yeah, better. Women wearing dresses above the knee, kind of weird.
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And
Dude,
honestly, some of the most.
I was Mormon.
Places,
I fully understand that.
Oh, you're LDS?
I was.
That's another story altogether. That's a loving community and a completely odd theology.
Yeah, it's a mess.
There's an interesting thing that churches do, in my experience, and that is that they are so incredibly self-segregating. And,
yes.
And so when you have, especially in the South, where there are, so many evangelicals and stuff, it's kind of a community that created itself, because it's like it is drawing up these very steep hills and tall walls to say this is what faith looks like. It also just happens to look like a bunch of white people. It just happens to look like people who aren't gay or transgender, and then using that as a weapon, a cudgel against other people as well.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. Yep.
And where I stand on most of that.
I wanted to share with you the kind of prayer that I am drawn to. I'm drawn to lots of different kinds of prayers, but I wanted to just share one with you. Is that okay?
That's fine. Yeah, this is from your best-selling book, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Oprah, call me, baby.
Yeah.
Right.
Seeds of Devotion, and it's just stories. So what I'm trying to do is help people know that stuff happens. Difficult things, joyous things, stuff happens. And to have a kind of mindful or prayerful orientation towards them, and then to ask the right questions to provide some meaning in the face of them. Mm-hmm. And so, this is after a chapter on Bonhoeffer and his best friend in New York City, Albert Fisher, who was an African-American guy. So this is the kind of prayer that I wanted to just share with you. That helps me, at least. Waymaker when there seems to be no way. Way shower, friend of the poor and oppressed. Grant us peace. Deliver us from our prejudices and our biases. Well, at least help us out when we try to take the next step towards anti-racism. It's our journey to take. You walk alongside. Help us to dream the beloved community, to visualize it and imagine it. Help us to do our little part to help bring it forth on earth as it is in heaven. Help us to encounter those who are different and see your face, your love, your image. May it be so. Right? That's the kind of prayer that I pray to try to keep me grounded, knowing that, like, I'm as screwed up as anybody else and just trying to walk this path.
Yeah.
I think there's a God armor involved. It's like as soon as you fall into a particular group that believes you have the God armor, you have the God armor, and so therefore you can use your God armor and Matthew 26:52 is hey, those who live by the sword die by the sword, so put that thing away. This
right.
It's about
put
compassion.
It down.
Yeah, put it down. And that rhymes again with like the whole gun rights thing, the open carry. They have a Jesus piece around their neck, and then a pistol in a holster on their waist. It's like, what message are you sending? And they don't realize the irony and the contradiction of that. Emily, were there other parts specifically about Colorado Springs that you found in your research that really stuck out to you?
The big thing with Colorado Springs is simply the understanding that we can talk about Amendment 2 and how the evangelicals helped create that. We can talk about, the English as the only language to be spoken and how the evangelicals help with that.
Yeah.
I can go on. I've been here a long time. I can go on about how religion and specifically evangelical Christianity has shaped Colorado Springs and the place where we are right now.
Right.
And with the understanding that that's the one of the biggest things that we're battling against, to bring Colorado Springs kicking and screaming into the now, is we are fighting this longstanding tradition, first and foremost, of conservatism that was just compounded by the influx of the evangelical Christian churches
in the 90s and that.
And that Colorado Springs has always been red.
Yes.
But now we're red.
Well,
right now we're red with, American blonde buff Jesus with a gun on his hip.
Scandinavian
that's
Christ, yeah.
Exactly. That's where we are. And he's standing up for the ideals of, okay, Nick.
Have you seen, Emily, have you seen the little Facebook poster thing that is Santa and Jesus sitting next to each other, and Santa's like, I hate it when something I created became this big commercial enterprise, and Jesus is like, raised eyebrow, like, yeah, I hear you.
Yeah,
I hear you.
Well, exactly, and that's we've gotten
so
people as religion have gotten so far away from the fact that Jesus was a brown guy who had no money. And yes, I understand that the books of the Bible are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but Jesus wasn't hanging out with Josh and Cody and Chad.
Right.
That's not who they were. Right. And the bottom line of the fact that a book that has been translated and has been interpreted so many different times in so many different ways, and to specific set up to observe specific goals. You need to take these things with a little bit of a grain of salt and understand that, as you were saying before, Roger, we need to find the common ground, and we need to understand that religion, we are not a theocratic nation.
Yeah.
We are supposed to be a democratic nation. And I have no problem with you having your religion. I will fight for your right to worship whatever you want.
Right.
As long as you keep it away
from the public.
From here.
Right. Yeah. Right on.
Yeah.
And my wife, after the Roe decision, my wife wrote a blistering letter to the editor that was published. We held an organizing meeting at All Souls. I want to I've got to run here in a minute, but sure. I want to just lift up. You know how Mr. Rogers was always like, find the helpers.
Yeah.
Yes.
like it's a shit show right now, right? Everybody knows that it's nasty. But I want to lift up some helpers right now in town. And I want to start with Mike Martin. He goes to Bethel Mennonite, and he is a quiet, strong, beautiful person, a good friend. And he founded Raw Tools. Raw is war backwards. Raw is war backwards. And he converts guns into garden tools.
Yep.
His wife, Hannah Martin, who is also at Bethel Mennonite, is super involved with the Sanctuary Coalition, helping folks without documentation. Jen Williamson is at Grace in St. Stephen's. She's a Methodist minister.
Neighbors for Education.
Neighbors for Education.
Yeah.
And Marta Fioriti, my beloved is at Black Forest Community Church. When COVID hit, and this is in the Black Forest, that's not exactly where the revolution's going to begin, right?
No.
But
Depending on who you ask.
yeah, right. But when COVID hit, they created an apartment for undocumented folks who were going to be expelled from their residences.
Yes.
And now they've got 2 apartments on the
Very
campus
nice.
there. All Souls has hosted both school board meetings and row meetings. First Congregational has been in the forefront of gay and lesbian and other kinds of rights. The Sanctuary Church is trying to feed the homeless and feed the marginalized. Earth Church in Manitou is doing its little pagan stuff. And then my friend Tracy Hiltz, person of color, working in an evangelical setting and really trying to work on racial reconciliation and racial justice issues. So that's just some helpers that I wanted to lift up. Yeah, because I think it's important for your readers to know that we are not going to give in to cynicism. We are not going to give in to despair. We are going to keep hoping and keep loving until the way of peace prevails.
Yes.
Roger.
And that's my last word.
Reverend Roger Butts, thank you so much for stepping on and chatting with us today.
Yes, thank you, Roger.
Since religion is such a huge deal here in Colorado Springs.
Yes, it is.
I mean, for Christ's sake, I hope that things turn around.
Thank you, Roger.
Bye, guys.
Well, that was a really great conversation that we interviewed there that we just had with Roger. That was
that was fantastic.
It was great. It was such a relief to know that there are people like Roger and his wife partner Marta Fieri working in the community and expressing compassion and empathy for people.
It's always interesting to see and meet people who are religious, who are not horrible.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Because I don't mean that everyone who's religious is awful, but who doesn't hate other people because of their religion.
Right.
And the ones who don't hide behind their Bible as, well, I hate you because this book says on this one page 4 words that say I'm supposed to hate you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like we were talking about offline not that long ago, is the idea that you can embrace other people for being different and not use it as a weapon against other people. 100%. Like I said, I'm an agnostic atheist, but the idea of not using the fact that I'm not a theist anymore as a weapon against those who are religious, and then say, like Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hutchins, when he was around, they were very much because you're religious, your religion is a disease, and therefore I have to be anti everything that you stand for. And that's the exact same mindset of evangelicals with their 7 mountains and all that stuff. It's the mirror thing. It's the exact same thing, just in reverse. And that's disgusting.
We could do 5 podcasts about the craziness that is that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just a little hint, a little tip, trick, whatever, for some people out there that may be listening to us and are going to text or email us and be like, oh my gosh, you're going to hell because blah, blah, blah. As an atheist, I don't believe in God, which also means that I don't believe in Satan either. So your threat of, I'm going to go burn in this hot place, honey, I don't believe in that. As much as I don't believe in your golden houses in heaven. So it's an empty threat. I mean, if you threaten me with eternity in Walmart, then we might have a problem. We might have a problem.
Well,
no.
Speaking of burning in an eternity, Emily, do you want to get us out of here?
Absolutely burning in eternity. Badly Needed and Long Overdue is a podcast about shaking things up in a conservative city. This show was hosted by Nick Raven, and Emily Lewis, which is me. You can watch the video version of this show on YouTube and listen to us in podcast form wherever you find podcasts. The show's music has been brought to you by the Knockblockers, local ska band. Highly recommend you go find them. You can reach us on a whole bunch of different social media platforms too, like Instagram at Badly Needed Podcast, on Twitter at Badly Needed COS, on Facebook at Badly Needed and Long Overdue Podcast, and on TikTok, yes, we TikTok, at Badly Needed Podcast.
We're Badly Needed and Long Overdue, and from the depths of hell where we are glazed over in warm lava, we'll catch you next time. Bye!
Bye!